The cool breeze from the ocean whispered through the curtains of the beachfront villa, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and freedom. Claire sat at the edge of the chaise lounge, her fingers delicately holding a wine glass. The golden liquid inside shimmered under the dim light of the sunset. She looked out over the water, her heart heavy with a longing she dared not speak aloud. It had been a year since Claire and her husband, Mark, bought the villa in hopes of rekindling their strained marriage. Mark was a successful corporate lawyer, always on the move, always in a rush. Claire, once a promising artist, had left her dreams behind to support his. She spent her days painting sunsets she no longer enjoyed and wondering when her life had veered off course. Mark had promised her this getaway would be different. Just us, Claire. No work calls, no distractions. I swear it. But within hours of arriving, his phone had buzzed relentlessly. Meetings turned into dinners, and dinners turned into late-night strategy sessions. And here she was, alone again, as the sun dipped below the horizon. Claire's solitude was broken by the faint sound of laughter from the neighboring villa. She turned her head and saw a man standing on his terrace, holding a glass of wine. His broad shoulders and easy smile caught her attention. He waved, a gesture so simple and genuine that it felt like a lifeline. Claire hesitated, then lifted her hand in return. The next morning, as Claire strolled along the shoreline, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw the man from the terrace. He was close enough now for her to notice the way the sunlight danced off his wavy brown hair. "Morning," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "I'm Daniel." "Claire," she replied, feeling a strange flutter in her chest. "You're staying next door?" he asked, motioning toward the villas. She nodded. "Yes, my husband and I are here for a while." Daniel's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than they should have. "Ah, the husband," he said with a small smile. "Well, if you ever need a beach buddy, I'm around." Claire laughed softly. "I'll keep that in mind." Their paths crossed again that evening. Mark was holed up in the study, on yet another call. Claire, restless and lonely, decided to take a walk. She found Daniel sitting by a bonfire he had built on the sand, the flames crackling against the night's chill. "Care for some company?" he asked, holding up a spare blanket. Claire hesitated but then sat down beside him. "I thought bonfires on the beach were illegal here," she teased. Daniel shrugged. "Some rules are meant to be bent." They talked for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Daniel told her about his travels, his passion for photography, and his recent decision to take a break from the corporate grind to rediscover himself. Claire found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years, sharing her love for art and the dreams she'd buried under the weight of compromise. "You should paint again," Daniel said, his voice filled with conviction. "The way you talk about it, it's like it's a part of you." Claire looked at him, her heart aching with the truth of his words. "Maybe," she whispered. The days that followed blurred into a tapestry of stolen moments. Daniel became her confidant, her escape from the monotony of her life with Mark. They walked along the shore at sunrise, shared secrets over coffee, and laughed like old friends. But beneath the surface, there was a tension, a magnetic pull that neither could deny. One evening, as they stood at the edge of the water, Daniel reached for her hand. "Claire," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I know this isn't simple. I know you have a life, a marriage. But I can't pretend I don't feel something for you." Claire's breath caught in her throat. She looked into his eyes, searching for the right words. "Daniel, I..." Before she could finish, he stepped closer, his hand gently brushing her cheek. "Tell me to stop, and I will. But if there's even a part of you that feels the same..." Claire's resolve crumbled. For the first time in years, she felt seen, understood, and desired. She closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was both tender and electric. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of the waves and the beating of their hearts. That night, Claire didn't return to the villa. Instead, she and Daniel stayed on the beach, wrapped in each other's arms, sharing stories and dreams until the first light of dawn. For the first time in a long time, she felt alive. But reality has a way of creeping back in. Over the following days, Claire wrestled with guilt and confusion. She loved Mark, or at least, she had once. But their marriage had become a shadow of what it used to be. And then there was Daniel, who had awakened something within her she thought she'd lost. One evening, Mark came home early from a meeting. He found Claire in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she washed the dishes. "Claire, is everything okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Mark, do you even see me anymore?" she asked, her voice breaking. He looked taken aback. "What are you talking about?" "Of course, I see you. You're my wife." "No, Mark," she said, her voice rising. "You see me as your wife, your support system, the person who keeps everything together. But do you see me? The woman I am, the person I've become?" Mark was silent for a long moment. "Claire, I didn't realize." "Exactly," she whispered. "You didn't realize. And I don't know if I can keep living like this." That night, Claire slept in the guest room. The following morning, she found a note from Mark on the kitchen counter. It was an apology, a promise to try harder, to be better. But Claire wasn't sure if it was enough. As the days turned into weeks, Claire continued to see Daniel in secret. Their connection deepened, their love growing in the shadows of her crumbling marriage. But with every stolen moment came the weight of their choices, the knowledge that they couldn't keep living in a fantasy forever. One afternoon, as Claire and Daniel sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, she turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "Daniel, I can't keep doing this. It's not fair to anyone, not to Mark, not to you, and not to me." Daniel's eyes were filled with pain, but he nodded. "I know," he said quietly. "But I'll never regret loving you, Claire." They shared one last kiss, a bittersweet goodbye that left them both heartbroken. Claire returned to the villa, determined to face the life she'd been avoiding. She and Mark began counseling, working through years of unspoken resentment and neglect. It wasn't easy, it was a start. Months later, Claire stood in her studio, a paintbrush in hand. The canvas before her was alive with color, a vibrant sunset that mirrored the one she had seen the day she met Daniel. She smiled softly, her heart heavy with memories but also filled with hope. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was finding herself again.